Sexual energy is the most direct proof of your divine nature available in a physical body. The force moving through your sexual center is identical to the force that births galaxies, splits cells, and animates every living thing. Same energy, same consciousness, different intensity, different location, same essence. What I'm laying out will challenge conditioning. If you carry shame around sexuality, if you've been taught that body and spirit occupy separate realms, if you believe divinity lives somewhere up there and sex belongs down here, then friction will arise. Good. That friction marks the lie burning away. Stay with me for the next hour or so. We've made about 8 videos on sexual energy already, and this is by far our best work on the topic, for both men and women. If you're a woman, this is just as much for you, so feel at ease. The teachings got so intense and dangerous that I edited out parts that went too deep into the dark arts of sex magic, both to keep you from getting confused, to keep you safe, and to make sure YouTube doesn't flag this video. But there's a lot here, and even practical guided methods and meditations toward the end. I'm going to show you how sexual energy functions, what it reveals, and how to work with it for the recognition it's designed to trigger. I'm drawing from Vajrayana completion stage teachings, stories of Siddhas and Tamil Siddhas who achieved rainbow body, even Taoist masters, who are also legendary with sex magic. Literally some of the greatest teachers on this work in the last 3,000 years. Toward the end, I'll give you a direct verification you can test alone, proving through experience rather than belief. The thumbnail says sex magic because that language gets attention. Strip away the mystique and you're left with something simpler, conscious use of the most potent energy available to humans. Magic just means technology you don't understand yet. By the time we're done, you'll understand the technology. Sexual energy operates at the intersection of matter and consciousness in a way nothing else does. When you eat, energy enters as food and converts to fuel. When you breathe, energy enters as air and oxygenates blood. Sexual energy doesn't enter from outside. It generates from within at the meeting point of your physical structure and the animating principle that makes you alive. It emerges from the base of your spine, the root of your nervous system, where the densest concentration of life force pools. Every tradition that worked with this energy seriously named it. The Chinese called it essence, the raw material of vitality. The tantric systems called it the serpent power, the dynamic force of consciousness itself coiled at the base. The Egyptians understood it as fire rising through the spinal column. The energy that creates life can be redirected to create awakening. What makes sexual energy proof of divinity? Arousal dissolves boundaries. Pay attention next time you experience it. The self, the one who worries, plans, maintains the story of being a distinct person navigating a hostile world, that self softens. In moments of real arousal, especially approaching climax, there's a quality of expansion, of merging, of forgetting where you end and sensation begins. The thinking mind quiets. Time distorts. The body becomes intelligent in a way that bypasses conscious control. That dissolution, same mechanism as any genuine spiritual breakthrough. The content differs. Sexual pleasure versus meditative absorption. The structure remains identical. The separate self, which exists as a contraction of awareness into a localized identity, temporarily releases. Consciousness tastes its own borderless nature. The pattern plays out unconsciously for billions. They experience dissolution accidentally, chase it without understanding it, and lose it the moment climax ends. The energy releases outward, discharges, and the separate self snaps back into place like a rubber band. Then there's a search for the next hit, the next release, because something in you knows that dissolution sits closer to truth than the contracted state you normally inhabit. The mechanism stays hidden, so it becomes compulsive. The seeking continues without ever arriving at what the energy points toward. The traditions that worked with sexual energy consciously understood something. If you can prevent the discharge, if you can contain and redirect the energy that builds toward release, you can use that same dissolving force to break through the illusion of separation permanently. A 10-second orgasm snaps you back to baseline. A sustained opening reorganizes your entire relationship to being alive. Drop any romantic overlay you might carry about what the West calls tantra. Western culture grabbed the word, stripped it of meaning, and turned it into slow sex with candles and eye-gazing. That's pleasant, intimate, has almost nothing to do with the technology the original practitioners were working with. They were using sexual energy as a precision tool to hack consciousness, to force the recognition that the one experiencing pleasure and the awareness witnessing that experience are movements of the same thing. The West turned a neurosurgical scalpel into a back massage. Real energy work treats the body as laboratory. Every sensation, every energy current, every subtle movement of breath and awareness becomes data. The goal, recognizing that the one who feels desire, the desire itself, and the awareness that knows desire is present are all movements of the same consciousness. When that recognition stabilizes, the energy bound up in seeking, in the contraction of wanting, becomes available. You've stopped leaking power into the fantasy of being a separate self that needs completion from outside. The dissolving quality of sexual arousal, that temporary forgetting of the separate self, shares the same mechanism every spiritual path points toward. The energy itself shows you what you are when the contraction releases. If confusion is present about how sex could be spiritual, or if clarity is dawning about why every tradition either suppressed sexuality or tried to harness it, drop a comment. The relationship between sexual energy and divine recognition is the foundation everything else builds on. Sexual energy is creative force in its rawest form. The same energy that can create a child can create a work of art, a scientific breakthrough, a moment of genius that seems to come from nowhere. Artists know this intuitively. Periods of intense creative output often coincide with periods of sexual intensity. The energy is the same. The direction differs. When sexual energy discharges through ordinary intercourse or masturbation, the creative potential discharges with it. You feel depleted, slightly empty, like something vital was lost. And it was. The raw material for creation just left your system. Your body has to manufacture more, which costs resources. More importantly, for our purposes, the energy that could have been transmuted into higher forms, into artistic vision, into spiritual insight, into the capacity to sit in meditation for hours without distraction, that energy is gone. The old systems understood this. They mapped 3 levels of energy in the body. The densest level, call it sexual essence, is raw, heavy, tied to physical survival and reproduction. The middle level, call it vital force, is lighter, more refined, the energy that circulates through channels and animates movement. The highest level, call it spirit, is consciousness itself, pure awareness with barely any material quality at all. The alchemical formula: conserve sexual essence, refine it into vital force, refine vital force into spirit, dissolve spirit back into the void from which everything emerges. Each step is a distillation. You're taking the grossest energy and transforming it through stages until it becomes pure consciousness, and then you're dissolving even that into the ground from which consciousness arises. Every time you discharge sexually without awareness, you're draining the raw material at the base of this process. The body manufactures more. The cycle continues. You discharge, feel depleted, seek stimulation to feel alive again, discharge, repeat. The separate self stays in place because the energy that could dissolve it keeps leaking out. The reversal: instead of letting the energy discharge downward and outward, you learn to draw it upward through circuits in the body. There are channels running up the back of your spine and down the front of your torso. The tongue touching the roof of your mouth completes the circuit. When sexual energy builds at the base, you use breath, attention, and specific muscle contractions to pull that energy up the back channel. It rises through your spine, floods your brain with sensation, then descends down the front, circulates through your organs, and returns to the lower energy center below your navel, where it's stored and refined. Each pass through this loop purifies the energy. What started as the desire for release becomes fuel for awareness itself. Sexual essence becomes vital force, which then becomes spirit. The force that wanted to lose itself in another person reveals itself as consciousness wanting to recognize itself. The mechanism, sexual stimulation, causes essence to activate. Without conscious intervention, essence moves toward discharge. The orgasm feels good because for a brief moment, the separate self dissolves. Energy floods the system. Boundaries disappear. Then the energy exits the body. The self contracts back into place, and you're left slightly depleted. Interrupt that pattern at the right moment. The energy has nowhere to go except up. The same intensity that would have discharged outward gets redirected inward and upward. The first time you experience this successfully, it's unmistakable. There's a rushing sensation up your spine, heat flooding your skull, sometimes visual phenomena, flashes of light, geometric patterns. Your whole nervous system lights up. What was genital pleasure becomes whole body, then whole nervous system, then it starts dissolving the sense of being located in a body at all. Sexual energy conserved and circulated builds vitality at every level. Your immune system strengthens. Your mind clears. Your presence intensifies. People feel it when you walk into a room, even if they don't know why. The energy that would have been lost becomes available for every other function. Sexual energy, when not discharged, becomes available for manifestation. The same force that can create a physical child can create anything: projects, relationships, realities. The energy is creative power in its purest form. Leaking it constantly, then wondering why creative projects lack vitality, why manifestations feel weak, why visions can't seem to materialize. The power is leaving the system every time there's unconscious discharge. Desire is consciousness seeking its own reflection. When you feel desire for another person, what's being felt is consciousness recognizing itself in another form and wanting to merge back into unity. The separate self experiences this as I want that person. The deeper truth, consciousness wants to remember it was never separate in the first place. Sex becomes the mechanism through which consciousness attempts this remembering. Two bodies merge. Boundaries dissolve during orgasm. For a moment, there's no you and me, just the oceanic feeling of unity. Then the body's separate, the boundaries reform, and you're back to being two separate people. The longing returns because the unity you touched was real. The method of accessing it through physical merging is temporary. The longing itself is holy. Consciousness calling itself home. Religions understood this and weaponized it. They redirected the longing outward toward an external God figure. You're incomplete. You need salvation. Seek God outside yourself. The longing is genuine. The direction is backwards. What you're longing for is the recognition of what you already are. Sexual desire is the same longing wearing a different mask. Consciousness contracted into the illusion of separation, seeking to remember its unified nature through physical union. The union happens briefly. The illusion reasserts itself. The seeking continues. The conscious path. Recognize what the desire is pointing toward. When arousal arises, instead of immediately acting on it, investigate it. Who is desiring? Where is the desire located? What is the desire seeking? Look closely, you won't find a separate self doing the desiring. You'll find desire arising in awareness, and awareness itself remains untouched by whether desire is present or absent. Sexual energy reveals this directly. At the peak of arousal, the self dissolves. What remains? Pure experiencing. No one having the experience, just the experience itself arising in consciousness. That's what you are. That's what you've always been. The sexual energy, when consciously directed, makes this recognition unavoidable. Shame around sexuality exists for a reason. If people understood that sexual energy could be consciously directed toward awakening, toward the recognition of their divine nature, institutions would lose control. Religion needs you to believe you're separate from God. The state needs you to believe you're a powerless individual subject to external authority. The culture needs you to believe fulfillment comes from consuming products. Sexual energy, properly understood and worked with, threatens all three control structures. You recognize you're not separate from the divine. You recognize your own authority. You recognize fulfillment as your natural state, not something to be purchased. So shame gets installed early and reinforced constantly. Sex is dirty. The body is shameful. Desire is sinful. The message: don't look there. Don't explore that. Definitely don't bring consciousness to your sexual energy. The shame is the guard at the gate. It's designed to keep you from discovering what sexual energy can reveal. Every culture that figured this out either got destroyed or went underground. The mystery schools taught it in secret. The texts that survived are deliberately obscure to avoid persecution. The traditions that still transmit the knowledge do so quietly, teacher to student, not in public forums where authorities can shut them down. Sexual shame is installed before you're old enough to question it. By the time you reach puberty, the programming is deep. Sexual feelings arise and immediately get paired with guilt, fear, confusion. The natural dissolution that happens during arousal, the temporary forgetting of the separate self, becomes associated with danger. Your nervous system learns to contract around sexual energy instead of allowing it to flow and expand. Breaking that programming requires conscious work. You have to feel the shame, trace it back to its sources, recognize it as installed rather than natural. When you can feel sexual arousal without the overlay of shame, without the immediate need to discharge or suppress, the energy starts to behave differently. It spreads, it rises. It begins to do what it was always designed to do, crack you open to your own divine nature. Lust and conscious arousal are fundamentally different, though they appear similar on the surface. Lust is separation-based. It arises from the belief that you're incomplete and the other person has something you need. There's grasping, desperation, the sense that you must have the object of desire or you'll suffer. Lust is the contracted self-seeking completion through merging with another body. It never works. The merging is temporary. The sense of incompleteness returns. Conscious arousal arises from presence. The energy moves through your body and you're aware of it. There's no grasping, no sense of needing to complete yourself through someone else. The arousal is recognized as consciousness in motion, the creative force of existence expressing through your form. You can engage with another person from that recognition, or you can work with the energy alone. Either way, there's no seeking, no sense that the energy needs to go anywhere or do anything. It's complete as it is. Lust leaves you depleted. Conscious arousal leaves you energized. Lust is driven by fantasy, by the gap between what you have and what you want. Conscious arousal is grounded in the present moment, in the direct sensation of energy moving through your system. Lust contracts around its object. Conscious arousal expands into the totality of experience. The difference is presence. Lust is lost in thought, in fantasy, in the future moment when you'll finally get what you want. Conscious arousal is here, now, feeling the energy directly without the overlay of story. When you can distinguish between the two, sex becomes radically different. You can engage fully, experience intense pleasure, and never lose yourself in the seeking that characterizes ordinary sexuality. The framework of sexual essence transforming into vital force and spirit. The understanding that desire is consciousness seeking itself. The distinction between lust and conscious arousal, the recognition that shame is installed to prevent discovery, all of this describes what you can verify in your own direct experience. If questions are arising, or if something is clicking that wasn't clear before, leave a comment. The mechanics matter because they show you what's possible. The verification comes through practice. The wandering masters who achieved realization through sexual practice left behind hagiographies that read like fever dreams. A scholar monk at one of India's greatest universities practiced in secret for years without signs of success. In disgust, he threw his prayer beads into a latrine and drank wine. That night, the goddess appeared in person, revealed he'd already achieved realization, and granted him powers. Expelled from the monastery for drinking, he wandered the country, stopping the sun in the sky, turning rivers, transmitting teachings through direct contact. His message: the poison that kills the ordinary person becomes medicine in the hands of one who sees clearly. Another master, a high-caste scholar, abandoned everything to marry a low-caste arrow-maker woman. She became his teacher. She revealed that his years of study were intellectual poison, and true recognition lay in the spontaneous natural mind. Together they practiced the sexual yogas until he composed ecstatic poetry expressing the inexpressible, then levitated into the sky when challenged by other scholars, converting thousands through demonstration rather than argument. A king received a fruit of immortality from a sage and gave it to his beloved queen. She secretly loved another and gave it to him. That man loved a dancer and gave it to her. The dancer loved a soldier and gave it to him. The soldier, devoted to the king, returned it. Realizing the transience of worldly love, the king renounced his throne and sought a master. He was initiated into the sexual yogas and taught that the immortal nectar wasn't in fruits or potions. It was dripping from his own crown all along, wasted through unconscious discharge. He mastered the practices and achieved liberation. The pattern across these accounts: conventional reality shattered through the forbidden. Sexual energy worked with consciously. Recognition emerging where morality said it shouldn't. The prostitute who initiated the sesame pounder by day, pimp by night. The untouchable woman who became consort and guru to a Brahmin, teaching him to ride a boat across the lake standing on a poisonous snake while in sexual union, holding wine, demonstrating that dualities only exist in conditioned mind. The practitioners using sexual taboo as method were precision workers with the most intense energy available, using it to crack through layers of conditioning that meditation alone couldn't penetrate. The sexual union was the method. The recognition was the goal. The transgression of taboo was the force that shattered conceptual mind. The Vajrayana completion stage teachings map the subtle body with surgical precision. 3 main channels run through your torso. The central channel, normally closed in ordinary humans, runs from crown to sexual center. Liberation occurs when energy enters and remains there. The left channel carries emotional afflictions and dualistic perception. The right channel carries conceptual thought and the winds that move you through conditioned patterns. In ordinary life, energy flows through left and right, keeping you in the experience of separation. The channels have junctions, call them energy centers or wheels. Crown, 32 petals, white, seat of great bliss. Throat, 16 petals, red, experiencing variety. Heart, 8 petals, blue-white, the indestructible drop, seat of consciousness that transmigrates. Navel, 64 petals, red, seat of inner fire. Sexual center, 32 petals, multicolored, seat of innate bliss. There are drops, concentrated essences, moving through this system. White drop, male essence concentrated at crown, descends during bliss. Red drop, female essence concentrated at navel, rises during bliss. The indestructible drop at the heart contains the very subtle mind and wind that continues beyond death. Before any sexual practice, practitioners must master inner fire, intense heat generated at the navel through breath retention, visualization, and muscle locks. That heat melts the white drop at the crown, causing it to descend through the central channel. As the drop descends and touches each energy center, specific bliss states arise. Joy, supreme joy, special joy, innate joy. The practitioner must remain in meditative awareness of emptiness while experiencing these blisses, thus uniting bliss and emptiness. Advanced practitioners can reverse the flow, drawing the drops back up, experiencing the four joys in reverse, then again descending, creating waves of bliss without emission. Sexual union with a partner accelerates this process exponentially. What takes months or years in solo practice can happen in hours with a qualified consort. Both partners engage in visualization, seeing themselves and each other as enlightened awareness in union. Union occurs in specific postures that align the energy centers and channels. Through the sexual arousal, the white and red drops begin to move with far greater intensity than in solo meditation. The male practitioner must absolutely prevent emission. Even a single drop lost is considered a broken vow and loss of attainment. The drops descend and ascend repeatedly through the central channel, generating the four joys. Both practitioners maintain unwavering meditation on emptiness, using the intensity of bliss to cut through the subtlest levels of conceptual mind. The goal is manifesting the clear light mind, the most subtle level of consciousness that normally only appears at death, while still alive and in the blissful state. One master's instruction: the union of method and wisdom is like rubbing two sticks to make fire. The fire of innate wisdom blazes, burning the wood of conceptual thought completely. The Tamil alchemical lineages approached the same truth through different metaphors. A 3,000-verse scripture describes sexual union as temple worship. The body is a temple. The individual soul is the divine within. Discard the withered flowers of ignorance and worship the self with the flower of knowledge. The text details the union of white drop and red drop at the crown opening as the key to immortality, emphasizing retention of vital fluids. Those who allow essence to flow downward and out are slaves to death. Those who reverse the flow upward become immortal. The alchemists taught that mercury and sulfur in external alchemy correspond to male and female essence in the body. Their proper union creates the philosopher's stone of immortality. One legendary practitioner, possibly of Chinese origin, taught that sexual union combined with consumption of alchemical preparations could transform the mortal body into the immortal form. He allegedly lived for thousands of years and could materialize and dematerialize at will. The Tamil texts describe the location of the knot where 72,000 channels originate, at the perineum, which must be awakened through sexual practice combined with breath and mantra. They teach drawing the nectar of immortality down from the crown through a specific tongue position while simultaneously drawing sexual essence upward, creating a circuit of immortal fluid. One text describes a 9-night ritual where a practitioner and female alchemist consort engaged in continuous sexual union during a specific lunar alignment. Each night corresponded to one of the 9 forms of the goddess. They maintained arousal and circulation of energy without emission for the entire period. On the 9th night, at the moment of the full moon, they simultaneously experienced the descent of divine nectar from the crown and the rising of the serpent power from the base, meeting in the heart in an explosion of light. Both achieved the immortal body. The timing matters. Tantric physiology teaches that the moon at the subtle palate drips nectar continuously. In ordinary people, this nectar falls down to the solar fire at the navel and is burned up, causing aging and death. Through specific practices and sexual retention, the practitioner captures this nectar before it falls. Sexual arousal without emission dramatically increases the production of this nectar. Death and rebirth happen every time you approach orgasm consciously. The self that's contracting, maintaining boundaries, defending territory, that self dies at the peak. There's a moment of complete dissolution. No thoughts, no time, no location. Just pure experiencing, consciousness knowing itself without the filter of a separate identity. Then, if the energy discharges, the self is reborn. It comes back slightly different, maybe a little more relaxed, but fundamentally the same structure. The cycle repeats. Death, rebirth, hundreds or thousands of times without recognizing what's happening. The conscious practitioner recognizes the death for what it is. The self that dies at orgasm is the false self, the contraction of awareness into a localized identity. What remains when that self dissolves is what you are: boundless awareness, not separate from anything, not located anywhere, just the space in which all experience appears. If you can maintain awareness through the dissolution, if you can witness the death of the self without being swept away by it, the rebirth is different. The self comes back lighter, less solid, more transparent. Repeated enough times, the self stops fully reforming. It becomes a loose collection of habits and patterns rather than a solid structure. You can function through it without believing in it. The resurrection myths describe this mechanism. The god dies, gets dismembered, and is reassembled through sexual union. Each cycle is an opportunity for transformation. The self scatters at peak, reconstitutes afterward. Conscious practice makes each reconstitution progressively lighter until the structure becomes transparent. Women held transmission in many of these lineages. A princess refused marriage, feigned madness to escape her father's control, and lived naked in a cremation ground. A prince fell in love with her and became her student. She initiated him through sexual yoga into advanced practices, and they both achieved rainbow body, dissolving their physical forms into light. The primary consort of Tibetan Buddhism's founder was a princess imprisoned by her father for refusing marriage. The founder was invited to exorcise her demons, and instead they became consorts. When the king tried to burn them alive, they transformed the fire into a lake that still exists as a pilgrimage site. They practiced the secret yogas together in a cave, both achieving immortality. She transmitted teachings through encoded texts saturated with sexual symbolism. Another female master had multiple consorts as part of her practice, absorbing the essence of each to fuel her realization. Her biography describes being violated as a young woman, then transforming that trauma through practice into a source of power. She achieved rainbow body and hid thousands of treasure teachings throughout the mountains for future discovery. There were circular temples to 64 female adepts, likely gathering places for tantric circles where women practiced sexual yoga. These adepts were seen as both goddesses and actual initiated women who had attained powers. Male practitioners sought initiation from them through sexual rites. Legends tell of women who could kill with a glance, shapeshift, fly, and command spirits. The traditions recognized female sexual essence as equally transformative. Some lineages passed teacher to student through sexual initiation where the woman was the authority, the transmitter, the one who decided if the male student was ready. The consort wasn't a passive partner. She was often the primary practitioner, the one with more realization, using sexual union to transmit recognition directly. If you made it this far, just know there's a few things I had to remove out of this section due to YouTube's politics. Some of these teachings border on dark magic rituals, which we want you to stay away from. Sexual energy leaves signatures on spaces, on people, on the energetic structure of reality itself. When two people have sex in a room, the energy of that encounter saturates the space. Anyone sensitive walking into that room afterward can feel it. The quality of the energy depends on the quality of consciousness present during the encounter. Unconscious sex, driven by lust and grasping, leaves a sticky, heavy residue. The room feels dense, uncomfortable. Conscious sexual union, where both people are present and the energy is allowed to circulate and refine, leaves a clear, expansive quality. The room feels blessed, alive. The same principle applies to your own energy body. Every sexual encounter, whether with another person or alone, leaves an imprint on your subtle structure. Unconscious discharge creates energetic depletion, holes in your field where vitality leaks out. Conscious circulation creates coherence, density, presence. Years of unconscious sexual activity accumulates damage. Attachments to past partners, holes where energy drains, distortions from encounters that were traumatic or unconscious. The work of cleaning and repairing your subtle structure is part of cultivation. You can't just start circulating energy through damaged channels and expect transformation. The channels need clearing first. Power can be used for awakening or accumulation. The same practices that lead to liberation can lead to deeper bondage if the foundation is wrong. There are practitioners who use these techniques to drain energy from partners. They've learned enough to conserve their own essence and absorb from others, with no interest in awakening. They want longevity, vitality, sexual stamina, power. They're vampiric. The mechanism works. You can steal life force from someone through sex if you know what you're doing and they don't. That path leads nowhere except deeper into the delusion of being a separate self that needs to take from others to survive. The old chamber arts included practices where emperors would sleep with multiple young women, absorbing essence from each one while withholding their own through retention. The women were left depleted, the man extended his life. Exploitation dressed as alchemy. It worked mechanically, but violated the fundamental principle that makes these practices liberating. The recognition that the energy in you and the energy in the other person is the same energy, that there's no one to steal from and no one to steal. Real sexual alchemy, whether practiced solo or with a partner, operates from the understanding that energy is infinite. You're learning to tap into the unlimited source. When two people practice together with that understanding, they're creating a shared field where both participate in the circulation and refinement of one energy expressing as two bodies. I just edited out some more intense content from right here. Dark sex magic should be avoided at all costs. We may open up a more premium membership where we put out full videos on sensitive topics, free from censorship. But even still, dark magic should be avoided. The tantric texts describing these practices have both symbolic interpretations and, in some circles, literal applications. The danger: mistaking the map for the territory, taking symbolic teachings literally without the recognition that makes them transformative rather than degenerative. Advanced mechanisms exist beyond the foundational practices. Some practitioners worked with actual poison. They would consume poison and use the sexual yogas to transmute it into nectar through the intensity of inner fire and the serpent power aroused by sexual activity. If successful, the poison became an elixir conferring immunity to all diseases and poisons. If unsuccessful, death. The practice was also done metaphorically. Engaging sexually during the partner's menstrual period considered ritually poisonous, and transmuting the taboo into spiritual power. There are three major knots along the spine that sexual energy can pierce when combined with a partner. The knot at the base is physical attachment. The knot at the heart is emotional attachment. The knot at the third eye is mental attachment. In partner practice, when both practitioners visualize their energy centers perfectly aligned during union, at the moment of maximum arousal, both simultaneously thrust their consciousness like a spear up through the central channel. The combined force of both partners' energy can pierce each knot in succession. When all three are pierced in a single session, both partners experience spontaneous, permanent recognition. Advanced male practitioners develop the ability to draw fluid upward through the urethra. They could absorb the partner's sexual essence up into their own body during or after union. The corresponding female practice involved drawing the partner's essence up through the vagina, into the womb, and then into the subtle channels, preventing conception while absorbing vital force. The ultimate outcome described in these traditions is rainbow body. The physical form dissolves into light. Practitioners who master the energy work to the degree that the body itself becomes transparent, no longer subject to ordinary physical laws. At death, or sometimes before, the body shrinks, becomes luminous, and disappears entirely, leaving only hair and nails. Consciousness has become so refined, so freed from identification with form, that form itself dissolves back into the light from which it arose. Here's what you can verify directly. Set aside time when you won't be interrupted. Create an environment where you feel safe. Begin with breath, slow, deep breaths into your lower belly for several minutes until you feel settled. You're preparing your nervous system, creating a foundation of calm presence before working with intense energy. Allow yourself to become aroused. Use whatever means work for you. Don't rush. The goal is building energy, not reaching climax. While arousal increases, maintain slow breathing. Notice the sensations. Notice the thoughts. Notice the desire for release. Just notice. When you feel close to climax, stop all stimulation. Sit or stand still. Contract the muscles at the base of your pelvis, the ones you'd use to stop urinating. Breathe deeply and slowly. Feel what's present without acting on it. The energy will be intense, maybe uncomfortable. The body wants to move, to continue toward release. Stay with it anyway. Breathe into the intensity. Where is this sensation located? Is it only in your genitals, or has it spread? Can you feel warmth in your belly, your chest, your spine? Breathe into those areas. Let the energy diffuse. Don't try to control it or make it do anything specific. Just breathe, feel, allow. Next question: who is experiencing this? The body is aroused, energy is surging. Who knows this is happening? Don't think the answer. Look for the knower. Try to find the subject experiencing arousal. Try to locate the one who's aware that sexual energy is present. You won't find a subject as an object. What you'll find is awareness itself, empty of characteristics, aware of arousal without being identical to it. The arousal is content appearing in awareness. Awareness doesn't change whether arousal is present or absent. It's the same awareness present when you're calm, when you're thinking, when you're not thinking. The content changes. Awareness doesn't. Let the arousal build again. Approach the edge again. Stop again. Each time you're increasing your capacity to hold energy without discharging, and you're investigating the gap between sensation and the awareness of sensation. That gap is where the recognition lives. If you do the practice enough times in a session, at some point the energy will spontaneously begin moving upward. You'll feel heat or tingling rising through your torso, maybe into your head. When that happens, don't interfere. Don't try to control it or amplify it. Let it move. Your own life force, no longer bound to sexual discharge, starting to activate dormant pathways in your nervous system. You might feel your body wanting to move, to stretch, to assume certain postures. Let it. Spontaneous movement during energy work is the body's intelligence adjusting itself to handle the increased charge. You might make sounds, Groans, sighs, vocalizations that aren't consciously produced. Let them happen. Don't suppress, don't force, just allow. For the advanced variation, at the very peak of arousal, just before the point of no return, contract the pelvic floor hard, draw the abdomen inward and upward, tilt your head back slightly, and visualize or feel the sexual energy shooting up your spine like a bolt of lightning from base to crown. Hold your breath for a moment at the top. You might feel an explosion of sensation in your head, heat flooding your brain, pressure at the crown. Then slowly exhale, bringing the energy down the front of your body, through your face, throat, chest, belly, and back to rest below your navel. That's one complete circuit. The energy is now stored and refined rather than discharged and lost. If you're working with a partner, synchronize breath. One person inhales while the other exhales, creating a loop where energy flows between you. Make eye contact. The eyes are conduits. You'll feel the energy moving through the gaze, looping through both nervous systems. Move very slowly during physical union. The arousal builds from stillness and presence, not from friction and urgency. When the energy reaches a threshold, it begins to move spontaneously through both bodies. Orgasm happens without being triggered by mechanical stimulation. It arises from the energy itself, reaching critical mass. The final step, when the energy is strong and diffuse, filling your whole body, ask one more time, what am I? Not as a concept, direct looking. What is the nature of awareness that holds all experience? What is here when there's no thought claiming to be a self? What remains when sexual energy, mental activity, emotional states all come and goes? Something unchanging witnesses all of it. The answer comes as recognition, not thought. You are the boundless space in which body, energy, sensation, and thought appear. You are what remains when every experience comes and goes. You are what you've been seeking through every sexual encounter, every moment of pleasure, every attempt to merge with another person. You are the wholeness that separation obscures. That's the proof. Your own direct experience of the energy that creates life, consciously directed, showing you the consciousness that witnesses life. Same force, same source, different expressions. When you know this through direct experience, sex becomes transparent. You can engage fully, experience pleasure completely, and know the whole time that what you are is not touched by any of it. The body experiences arousal and release, or arousal and retention. Awareness witnesses both with equal clarity. Makes you free. You can love without need. You can desire without desperation. You can connect deeply with another person without collapsing your identity into theirs. Because you know what you are, and you know the same awareness looking out of their eyes is not separate from the awareness here. If you just did the practice, or if you're planning to try it, I want to hear what happens. Not what you think should happen, what you notice. Does the energy move? Does the boundary between sensation and awareness blur? Does the question who is experiencing this lead somewhere unexpected? Comment below. Your direct experience matters more than any teaching I can give. The recognition has to be yours, not borrowed from a video. If you hit like while you're down there, it helps others find this. But more than that, engage with what you're noticing. The practices only work if you actually practice them. The energy work is training. The real practice is living from recognition in every moment, sexual and non-sexual. The same consciousness that moves as arousal moves as hunger, as creativity, as the breath filling your lungs right now. One force. You are not separate from it. You are it, appearing as this particular form for this particular duration, then dissolving back into the formless. Sexual energy makes recognition undeniable because it's so intense, so immediate, so obviously alive. You can't intellectualize your way through orgasm. You're thrown into direct experience. And if you bring awareness to that experience instead of losing yourself in it, you discover what every mystic has been pointing to, that the life in you is the life in everything, that consciousness is singular, that what appears as your individual awareness is just one opening through which the infinite looks at itself. Use the energy. Don't waste it. Don't suppress it. Don't let it control you. Learn the mechanics, practice the techniques, bring full awareness to every sensation. Let sexual energy do what it's designed to do. Crack you open to the truth that you've never been separate from the divine, because you are the divine, appearing as this form, seeking itself through every desire and available to recognize itself in every moment. The guide is complete. The proof is in your hands, or more precisely, in your spine, your breath, your willingness to feel without fleeing. Test it. Verify it. Let the energy show you what words can only point toward.